Hi there, and welcome to Keep Up With Conspicuous. This is a follow-on conversation from a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago about the best practices for attracting staff in the dynamics industry, and this is all about the retention of staff. The idea of this is that if you retain your best staff well, then in theory you should spend less on recruitment fees, and you will ultimately, more importantly, have a better company and a more productive and efficient company. So, what I'm trying to do in this presentation is give a few tips, kind of give you an idea of where the market's going and what candidates are looking for, and I guess highlight again why retention is so important, and perhaps maybe maybe a couple of what key points you could take away as to why you can improve retention. So I'll get started and hopefully share some insight. So um, the retention of staff is critical in any space. Dynamics is no exception to that. You want to maintain your best staff. We see it time and time again that the companies that do the best keep their best staff. If you keep your best staff and keep them happy, then they'll be productive for you and they'll work for you and they'll be with you for a long time and do great work. And we know the dynamic space is competitive, so we know that people who work for companies are getting approached all the time by other companies, whether they be partners or end customers. So it's really important that you identify who your best people are that you don't want to lose, and you make sure that you keep them, and you make sure that you keep them happy. So you really want to focus on that. Uh, Naturally, replacing staff is expensive. You not only have the potential recruitment costs, you have the potential costs of having a vacancy open. That could lose you customers. If you lose some good consultants, some good PMs, some good developers, whatever it might be, you suddenly have. If you're a partner, you have the potential of losing customers because you're losing good staff. If you're an end customer, you have key people involved with your project leaving the project, which is going to delay the project and then it will end up costing more money. So, replacing dynamic scanners is expensive. Um, you lose knowledge, it impacts clients, you create gaps. You just really don't want it to happen. So, hopefully, we can focus on that. And as a company and as companies, what we can do to retain staff better. Um, the trend at the moment that we've seen, and there's been a bit of research on this, is that the quit rate is dropping quite a lot. So, what we've had over the last couple of years is a market where people haven't been that confident to leave because they feel that in 2021 and 2022, everyone was leaving jobs. They thought, right, it's fine. The market's really good. If I leave, there'll be loads of options. That's changed over the last couple of years, and therefore, candidates are thinking that if they leave, it's got to be for an amazing opportunity, and so therefore, people aren't quitting jobs as much as they were. So therefore, people are looking at stability, and these stats are based on iHire's research. So this is a survey that was done across the US, and basically the trend shows that people are looking for greater stability, and therefore they want to join companies that are stable, that have low employee turnover, because most people are looking for companies where they can stay for a long time, and therefore people aren't leaving. So I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but if I didn't, just so that everyone remembers, there's a lot of information now online. I think about Glassdoor reviews. LinkedIn has employee tenure, very clearly stated on company pages. So it's very easy to identify which companies are good at retaining their staff. And it's very good to see which companies on Glassdoor, very easy to see which companies are not looking after their staff. So that information is all very accessible to potential candidates and to employees now. So you want to really be looking at that and analyzing that and seeing what you can do about that. Now, I think Glassdoor is very easy. You should be making sure that you're getting employees that enjoy working at um, your company to write good reviews. You want to be having a Glassdoor rating of more than 4 out of 5. Really, I think if it's less than 4 out of 5, that could potentially be a problem. And anything less than 3 out of 5, and it's a real issue, I think you're going to not maybe be able to attract great staff. Um, and then I think in terms of looking at employee turnover. I mean, you really want it kind of between anything less than 2 years is perhaps a concern for candidates. If it's a established company, and maybe not if it's a startup. But then I think you want to be looking at that. Generally, you want an employee turnover rate. You want a median employees to be staying for 5 years or more. If people stay for more than 5 years, then people feel comfortable joining that company that they're going to be looked after and kept happy. So I want to be looking at those statistics. We'll go into a bit more about that later in the presentation. Um, Looking at why people leave. So generally, I mean, salary does come into it. You've got to be looking at salary. You've got to be looking at lack of challenge and lack of ability to progress. Those are kind of normally the first two things why people leave, is either salary or what's seen as a lack of opportunity to progress. Um, you get other more like specific things like poor project management. If you're not getting exposure to the new technology, that is an issue. Inflexible work environments, increasingly these becoming more of a problem. We're seeing a lot of companies. That's actually very common. If people are doing 5 days a week on site, they will often leave for a company offering a hybrid or remote model, and sometimes will actually take a salary drop to do that. So you want to be looking at that. If that's becoming a massive trend in your company and you operate on an on-site model, and you find firstly you're losing staff and secondly not being able to attract staff, that might be something you need to look at. It may be that you're in an industry where you need to be on site 5 days a week. I do understand that there are some, but you just want to consider that maybe if you can move it to a hybrid model, you might be able to attract and retain your staff a little bit better. So you want to hire for long-term fit. So first of all, you want to be looking at so when you're doing the hiring, and this comes back to the recruitment aspect a bit more, but you want to be really thinking about, am I hiring someone who's got good tenure? So tenure, we're seeing that a lot as a request from companies, that they want to hire people who have been in jobs for a long time. So again, speaking really to potential candidates listening to this, I know that you are looking for stability, most of you, um, and that's good because employers are also looking for that. So stability is one of the main things I've seen over the last couple of years that people are really looking for, both clients and candidates, and they go hand in hand now. So uh, employers are looking for people that have been in their jobs for a few years, really, if they can. And they do appreciate that redundancies happen and people lose their jobs, but if you can give good reasons as to why you've left your jobs, then normally that is okay. And of course, a layoff is a very suitable reason that you're looking for a job, of course. So yes, you want to be in the interview. You want to be really having really good discussions about where the position goes. Where is this role going to be in 5 years' time? And if you can do that and give a clear message right from the start, you've got a much better chance of retaining your staff. So again, if you're speaking to people and they're saying, "Oh, you could tell for an interview," but you maybe want to be tailoring your questions a little bit more around retention. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your long-term interests? What are your long-term aims? That's worth mentioning to people so that they fit in with your core values? Because then if the candidate fits in with your core values, they will probably stay with you for a long time. So I think going back to that is really important, and therefore you'll probably naturally have a long-term fit and better retention just from interviewing a little bit better, a little bit more thoroughly. Um, Onboarding. So, particularly if someone's looking for stability, say they've left a position where they've been there for a long time, you need to be doing a very structured onboarding plan. And there are some tips here: a 30, 60-day, 90-day plan, assign a mentor or buddy, which is really good because someone can speak to them that, say, isn't their manager, is a really good way of doing that. Um, make sure that you're allowing networking opportunities happen within the company so they feel safe and empowered within the organization. Um, provide full environment access. We see companies where they just don't make people feel welcome, and it's really hard work to get everything set up. That's a terrible onboarding experience. You want employees to feel valued and that they have the ability to do their job from day one. So I think that's really important. And one of the things that I've seen before that works really well, even before they start, is we had a company where the CEO would just send a video, saying, "Hi, John. Hi, Sue. Really looking forward to joining the team. Can't wait to have you start on Monday." And it's literally 30 seconds of her walking her dogs in the park, and it went down really well with Candace. They felt valued from day one. The CEO of the company was offering them a welcome video message to join the company. Sends a really good message to people. So that's something I definitely recommend if you can do that. Internal progression. So it kind of makes sense, but people mainly, as I say, the two main reasons people leave are lack of progression and salary issues. So if you're not offering internal career progression, then of course your retention rate is going to be a lot lower. But I think you need to be talking to people and making sure that they have clear promotion paths. Whether that's laid out from day one is up to you. It doesn't have to be, but you have to constantly have those conversations with people. Some companies will lay out targets from day one. It's easier in certain positions. Obviously, in a sales role, it's sometimes easier. If you hit these numbers, you'll get promoted to this position, etc., etc., etc. It's perhaps more difficult in other roles like delivery roles or more technical based roles. But again, you want to set key targets that if people hit them, they get promoted, and then everyone knows what the progression and what the opportunities are. I think that's really important to do, and constantly discussing and reviewing those goals and what they might be. And they might be generally they're going to be professional, but there might be personal things that they want to achieve as well, which perhaps you as a company can help with, whether it's voluntary work or whatever it might be that they want to do. So, there'll be certain things that will make certain individuals happy. But progression is often, as I say, it's in the top two reasons of why people generally want to leave a position. So it's worth really digging down on that one. Um, yeah, I mean, it kind of links to progression. I guess boredom, is I guess that's what this slide is about. People where they feel that the job has become mundane and they don't have the challenge anymore. So again, offering them different opportunities. Now, whether that's different position, whether it's more managerial responsibilities, whether it's working with new technologies, um, it might be that they just have an idea that they want to run with. I think what you need to look at is again when you're getting people to sort of 3 to 5 years in a position, that's when you'll often find people start to look and think, am I going to get the progression opportunities at this company? That's when you might want to think, well, where can we offer them a little bit more variety and challenge? So that's when you've got to have those conversations with those individuals and say, how do we help them get to where they want to be? So that's just another thing you can offer in line with making sure we're retaining people well. Um, Flexibility, as I say, probably the third reason why people leave is flexibility. Um, so I think you need to really look at this and think about how you can help with that. Encourage time off, mental health support. You can pay for apps that help, Headspace and things like that help with mental health support. Um, Look at your benefits and how they're helping to retain staff. So um, yeah, again, that's really important. Prioritizing flexibility and well-being. We're finding a lot now that companies are doing more with the staff they have. Therefore, they're putting more and more and more pressure. And I spoke a couple of weeks ago how employees are becoming more valuable because you're having less employees doing the same amount of work. And that's great. But then the employees start to feel the pressure. They're doing more and more and more. And if you're not letting them have that opportunity to have holidays or have the ability to switch off from work, then it becomes tricky. So I think you want to look at approaches to how you promote flexibility and well-being within the working environment, because otherwise those people will burn out and they'll leave. And clearly they're good because you're putting a lot of workload pressure on them. So you want to be looking at that and seeing if there's anything you can do in regards to that. Yeah, salary is normally up there in the top two as to why people leave. So you want to be really comparing, making sure that people are being paid fairly and in line with the market. If they are, then they're probably going to stay. pretty self-explanatory, really. But I think you want to be looking at that and looking at how you're paying your staff. I appreciate as a business, you need to make a profit. So you've got to be looking at, you don't want to be overpaying staff, but you do want to be looking at how you're rewarding staff. And so maybe there's other things you can do, bonuses that will make up for, lack of base salary because for whatever reason the business isn't doing so well and you can't afford it. So I do get all of that, but it's really important to look at salary benchmarking across your industry, across your location, to make sure you're in line with salaries. Otherwise, you might lose good staff. So that's something that you want to be doing. That's something we can help with. So if you wanted to ever have discussions about are we paying the correct money for our dynamics team, then let me know and give you an idea of if you're in line or not. So happy to do that, and we've got a plenty of information about that, so we can kind of help you work out if you're in line in terms of salaries. And again, putting clear targets in place. If this is achieved, then yes, we'll give you a pay rise, and that's a win-win for everyone. So, um, you know, unfortunately, there are a lot of not unfortunately, there are a lot of recruiters, and there are a lot of recruiters that will be, approaching staff all the time, and therefore you need to make sure you're rewarding your staff fairly. Um, Again, strong leadership is another core reason why people leave is that people want leaders that listen to them, that let them run with ideas, that this is more in line. This slide's kind of, I guess, tailored more to the partner channel, but for end customers as well. But you want leaders that invest in you, and that support you, because working in the dynamic space for a partner sector can be very stressful. So you need leaders that understand the stresses of projects, because I get it. Customers are often going to be berating you and wanting to know what's going on with timelines. So it's a very often stressful environment. So employees want to know that the senior leadership are on side with them. And again, the same goes for an end customer. They want to know that the senior leadership are on side with the project. If the stakeholders aren't on board with the project, it's a very difficult work environment. So really, people want to know that the leaders are on board with them, understand, they have empathy. That's becoming increasingly important in the leadership space. So again, invest. The things we've seen constantly are the companies that invest in leadership do very well, and they retain their staff well, and they have a very clear vision. So it's really important to keep investing in leadership, to making sure that your company is doing well and retaining your best people. Um, Again, companies are very bad at this. They will do an exit interview when someone hands their notice in, but they won't really engage in interviews to find out how it's going. I think this is a really good tip. I think it's something that all companies could do better, actually. I think almost ourselves included, we need to take this on board. Think this is a brilliant thing to do, is conduct stay interviews as to, why people are staying at them and what might make them leave. These three questions here, I think that'd be a really good takeaway from this presentation. If you can get stay interviews with people and ask them that, that's going to really help you gather a really good view of your company and why people are either enjoying working there or why they might not be and why they might leave. And then, the question of how can we support your growth, it shows that you're on side with them, and you'll find out where they want to be in the next kind of 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, and how do you go about that. You can put a plan in place for that. Get those insights before they actually leave. That's when it's panic stations, or how do we counter that? And it doesn't look good to the employee. If you're just going to counter offer them, say they've been unhappy for months or years and you haven't noticed it, and then they have the notice in and you give them a counter offer. You should have identified that before that, really. It doesn't look great that you're doing that at the end. I think it's particularly the case when it's something doing money. I think if someone hands their notice in and you've been underpaying them for years, then it feels a bit bad to then give. If you counter offer them then with what their new offer is, well, to me, I kind of think it shows that the company had the money all along, just weren't willing to make the sacrifice of giving it to the employee. So I don't think it's a great look for employers to be doing that. Metrics that matter. So I've spoken a few about these, but attrition. So the attrition rate. How many people are staying in your business? How many people are leaving your business every 12 months? You want to be looking at that. Um, Generally, a healthy attrition rate is about 10%. A bit of staff turnover is okay. You want staff coming in with new ideas, so you don't mind a bit of attrition, but you don't really want it any higher than that. Um, and obviously, you get a bit of attrition anyway from people retiring and leaving and for various things. So that just happens. Um, the average tenure of consultants, like I said, that is very clearly on LinkedIn now. So you can see all that data. That'd be very clear. Certifications gained per year. Again, that's kind of a bit more if you're looking to invest in staff, but that's really what you want to be thinking about, like how many. You might have different metrics like you might set a KPI of not necessarily certifications, but we want our staff to. You might have your stay interviews. You might say, "Oh, I really want to do X, Y, Z. I really want to um, move into a leadership position." So you might say, "Okay, right. Well, how do we go about that? Well, what percentage of our staff are we moving into leadership positions? Or what percentage of our staff are we meeting their demands that they told us in their stay interviews?" That might be a good statistic. So these can vary from company to company. Like I said, promotion rate, that kind of ties in with that. You want to be thinking about that. How many of our staff are we promoting through the ranks each year? Uh, that red flags, if you have resource churn, it really affects your projects. Basically, you do not, like, there's just an emphasis on, you do not want to be losing staff in the middle of a project because you could potentially lose the customer. It could be worth millions of dollars to you. Particularly, that often in the partner world, a really good consultant or PM goes to another company. Well, there's a chance that that customer might end up going to that new partner as well with that person. So there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of buy-in that you get from people, from customers that are linked to specific people within your business. So make sure you keep them happy and keep them satisfied. So just to summarize, hire for growth, get the hiring process right, give a lot of detail at interviews, uh, make onboarding count. So make your onboarding process good, make them feel valued. Provide learning and variety and make sure you're paying competitively. Any information on salary benchmarking, I can help with this. Support work-life balance and make sure you have strong leadership in place is really key. And act on the feedback that you get from your employees and from, say, stay interviews. I think that's really important to do. And then you should, in theory, have a very well, happy and motivated team, which is what you really want to succeed in this space because it is a competitive space. So you need to be maintaining and keeping your best staff to make it competitive, really. Thank you very much. I hope that session gave you a few ideas. Happy to share anything else. Connect me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I can really help with any of that stuff. And if there's anything you think of or any questions you have for me on that, love to connect with you and hear more. So feel free to ask your questions, and we'll do a couple more of these later on in the year as well. But yeah, definitely all this stuff about recruitment and retention is something I can really help with. So any questions, just let me know.